The psalm now turns from Zion's foundation to Zion's family, naming nations once counted as enemies of Israel and declaring them citizens of God's city. This is not a footnote to the psalm's message. It is the message. I will make mention of Rahab and Babylon to them that know me. Behold, Philistia and Tyre with Ethiopia. This man was born there. Psalm 87, verse 4. God himself speaks in this verse, and the list he gives should stop any reader who knows Israel's history. Rahab here is a poetic name for Egypt, the nation that enslaved Israel for 400 years. Babylon destroyed Jerusalem and carried God's people into captivity. Philistia produced Goliath and warred against Israel for generations. Tyre stood as a wealthy trade power, often allied against God's people. Ethiopia represents the distant nations beyond Israel's borders. God names Israel's historic enemies and oppressors, then says of them, "This man was born there." He speaks of individuals from these pagan nations as native-born citizens of Zion. This is not a political alliance. This is a spiritual birth. Isaiah 19, verses 23 to 25, promises a highway between Egypt and Assyria, with Israel joining them. Paul later writes in Galatians 3, verse 28, that in Christ there is no Greek or Jew. The gates of Zion, so loved by God in verse 2, swing open to receive these nations. And of Zion it shall be said, this and that man was born in her, and the highest himself shall establish her. Psalm 87, verse 5. The psalmist expands the citizenship roles further, saying, this and that man without limit or exhausted list. Zion's birth registry grows to include every nation without distinction. This verse does not describe forced conquest or political annexation. It describes birth, the language of new creation, and spiritual regeneration. John 3 verse 3 records Christ telling Nicodemus that no one enters the kingdom without being born again. The psalmist adds that the highest himself shall establish her, repeating the foundation theme from verse 1. Zion's permanence and growing population both rest on God's own action, not on Israel's military strength or diplomatic skill. God, who founded the city, also guarantees her expansion to include the nations named in the previous verse. The Lord shall count, when he writeth up the people, that this man was born there. Selah. Psalm 87 verse 6. This verse pictures a divine census. God recorded each citizen of Zion by name and origin. The phrase, writeth up the people, evokes a formal register, similar to Revelation 20, verse 12, where books are opened and the dead are judged out of what is written. Here the register serves not judgment, but inclusion, confirming citizenship for those born in Zion, regardless of their nation of origin. Egyptian, Babylonian, Philistine, and Ethiopian names appear side by side in God's book, each entry stating that this person was born there. The Selah again calls for a pause, allowing the reader to sit with the reality that salvation history has always aimed toward this gathering of the nations, not the preservation of one bloodline. As well the singers as the players on instruments shall be there. All my springs are in thee. Psalm 87, verse 7. The psalm closes with worship rather than statistics. Zion's citizens, drawn from every hostile nation, do not hold status. They sing and make music together, united in praise. Singers lead with voice, and instrumentalists provide accompaniment, together forming one chorus. Each citizen declares, all my springs are in thee, meaning every source of life, joy, and provision flows from Zion, from God's presence dwelling there. This ending line points forward to the great multitude in Revelation 7, verses 9 to 10, gathered from every nation, tribe, and tongue, singing before the throne with one voice of praise to God, who alone is their fountain of living water.